Well, hello, everybody. It's me, Civilla Morgan. Welcome to the Childless Not by Choice podcast. We have an interview today, and you guys know how I feel about interviews. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you have guests, and everybody has to be on their best behavior, and it's really cool. But this guest is a repeat visitor. I'm so excited to be able to speak with one Jody Day today. And we're going to be talking a little bit about things we talked about on episode 90, which is the first time we spoke. But we're going to talk about some new things as well today. So whether you have children or not, thank you for tuning in to the Childless Not by Choice podcast. It's truly appreciated. So usually I do an intro. I'm not going to. We're just going to start talking because sometimes intros are for people who, we may not know them very well, but I know for a fact that most of my listeners also know who Jody Day is because you guys tell me all the time. So without further ado, Ms. Jody Day of the Gateway Women's Platform, Gateway Platform, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time out.
Oh, Civilla, it's delightful to be back. And I feel so honoured that you think I don't need an intro. I'm really touched by that. So thank you to you and thank you to your listeners for keeping me and my work in mind.
Yes, it's true because they tell me, literally they do tell me all the time, I know who she is. I read her book. I get it. She's fabulous. So yes, they tell me that regularly. So I wanted to just go ahead and get started. I have your information in the show notes, everybody. Remember to check the show notes because I do have the website and the books and all of that. Gateway Women, the link, all of that is in the show notes. So everybody, please be sure to check out the show notes. And I did put a link to episode 90 in the show notes.
Can you believe it's episode 90? It's
90, and we're at 166 now.
Incredible.
I can't believe it. But 9 years. July was my 9-year podcast anniversary. So,
that's incredible. Knowing how much work and expense podcasts are, the fact that you were at 90 and now this is 166. I just want to say thank you so much for your work because that is huge.
It is huge. And I'm looking forward to the 10 years because to me, that's like, it's cool. 10 years is a decade.
There can't be that many podcasts that are 10 years old. That will be cause for big celebration.
Yeah, there are a handful. But I think I'm joining a pretty cool club. Almost OG. Not quite, but almost. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And yes, it does take a lot, but I think I got trained by, as I was telling you before we started recording, the gentleman that really helped me in the beginning. There were two gentlemen, both Scottish gentlemen, who got me up and running on this whole podcasting bit, and I will never forget them. They taught me so much. So here we are. But I wanted to, I don't know why I'm going to just say it. I put a link to Robin Hadley's episode in here too. I'm going to have to go back and see why I did that. But yes, episode 90, our first conversation, which I will also tell you, has gotten so many downloads. I will not go into numbers, but that episode has gotten so many downloads, and I'm assuming it's going to get more now that we're... But it was a fabulous episode.
It was a good conversation. Yeah.
Yes, I really, really enjoyed it. So the link to episode 90 is in the show notes. And I also have in my notes Ignite Weekend. Are you still doing Ignite?
Reignite Weekend, yes, they are still running. They're running in the UK and Australia. I don't lead them anymore. I have a team of trained facilitators who lead them, but they're very much still going ahead. You can find them on my website. If you go to Gateway Women, you can click on Reignite Weekends and find out all about them.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about Reignite Weekend for those who may not be familiar?
It's a healing and transformational weekend for childless, not by choice women. And I've led it about 50 times myself, and then it's probably been led about the same amount again by my team. And it's the only thing like it in the world, and it brings together usually a group of strangers who leave as friends. And it's a weekend where we kind of process our grief and our loss, but uniquely then also look to the future and how perhaps we want to shape meaning in our lives going forward. So it's a lot happens in that weekend, which is why such amazing bonds form on that weekend, because we do a lot of deep work. There's a lot of joy, there's tears, there's laughter, and people leave with a lot of hope and with ideas about going forward with their childless life, which can feel, as you and I know, it can be a very hard time in our lives when we're wondering, what are we for? What have I done wrong? Am I ever going to be happy again? how do I shape meaning and purpose in my identity as a woman without children? Because the culture is still very hostile and unhelpful towards women who are childless not by choice and also child-free by choice.
We're going to talk about that a little bit because, the hostility has popped up again, but we'll talk
It's
about
ramped up. Yes, that's for sure.
Oh my goodness. This is the frustration. Again, I guess I'm kind of diverting a little bit, but that's been my frustration all 9 years. I'll be honest. And it seems like my frustration is a little higher now because of the hostility that's reared its ugly head again. It's like, why can't we get the word out? But we'll talk about that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I also have AWOC, AWOC.
Mm-hmm. Aging without children.
Right.
It's actually Robin and I, so Robin Hadley, who you just mentioned, Robin and I and two other people were the 4 campaigners who were the kind of the seed of AWOC, which was Aging Without Children in the UK back in 2014. That is now a UK charity called Aging Well Without Children. I'm no longer involved in it because I no longer live in the UK, but it's done a lot of really good work. And as you know, aging without children is a very, very important issue to me and to pretty well much everyone who is aging without children. So that's something we can talk about later because there's lots of things developing around that for me.
Okay, so I think that's pretty much, books. I know when we first spoke, we spoke about your book. Anything new coming down? Any new books coming?
Well, I am working on 2 new books. First of all, I'm working on a novel, which I've been working on for many years and which I very much hope to finish this year. So that is a subversive romantic comedy with a single childless menopausal woman as the heroine. And you never know, maybe Jennifer Aniston's production company will buy the film rights and we'll get the message out there that a childless life can be a transformational one too. And most of my work this year, my writing work has been happening on my Substack, Gateway Elderwomen, where I've had an incredible response. I'm writing about aging without children, but also aging as a woman in our culture, being 60 plus, when the only words of respect for a woman 60 plus is grandmother. And all of the rest of the words, crone, hag, harpy, cougar, you name them, they're all insults. So I'm reclaiming it. You know, my Instagram handle is @ApprenticeCrone. So having just crossed the threshold of 60, I suppose now I'm beginning to take on the mantle of my cronehood. That is a word also that can make people go, oh, you're calling yourself a crone? Because actually it used to, you know, before patriarchal, it was a word of respect. It means crowned with age. And it also has associations with dark goddesses, the goddesses of kind of death and transformation. Also not very popular kind of ideas in our culture, because actually to transform something in us usually has to die. As those of us who've been through a grieving process know that the person who comes out the end of a deep grieving process is not the same person who went in. You know, parts of our ego and our identity have undergone a form of death. So I'm the dark goddess and I am crowned with age. So I wear proudly my crown of cronehood.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about that too, but tell me the name of your Substack again.
Gateway Elderwomen.
Okay.
And you can also just Google Jody Day Substack and you'll find it.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to put that in the show notes. 2
of my essays this year have been in the top 3 of the culture section on Substack of the most read essays. And that's out of like 25,000 essays. So what I'm writing it's really surprised me. I thought it was going to be super niche, but actually a lot of people are relating to it. And not just childless women, child-free women, mothers, grandmothers, non-grandmothers, and a few enlightened guys.
So I'm going to make sure that that's in, I just put it in the show notes actually. So
Thank you.
Everyone listening, please be sure to go and check out Jody's Substack. You know, sometimes I wonder about Jennifer Aniston. I wonder if she knows we exist.
It's hard to know, isn't it? Yes. Yeah.
Because of course she doesn't have to put it out there that she's listening to any podcasts. It's, you know, she's a person, a whole human being by herself. She doesn't have to tell us anything. But I just wonder if she knows we exist and that there's a whole segment of society that sees her and hears her and understands her, and we're backing her.
I think she knows that. I think she knows that we've got her back. But understandably, she often doesn't identify to us. So if you're listening, hi, Jen.
Yes, exactly. Hi, Jennifer. I want to
Yeah.
talk to you. I've tried to reach out before. I'd love to speak with you.
Yeah.
So if you're interested. So speaking about loss and as we get
Mm.
older, we both have lost important people in our lives recently. You recently lost your mom, and I think not long after your mom-in-law, or is it the
Yes.
other way around?
No, you've got it right. It was my mum, and then just a few short months later, my mother-in-law. Yeah. Yeah, she lived with us as well. So she was 93. And for as long as I've been with my second husband, she has lived with him. So she's been a big part of my life for the last 8 years. We were very close. And we were caring for her at the end. And then she had a terminal cancer diagnosis at 93, which she was so funny about. She thought it was incredibly bad manners to get cancer at 93. She really thought she was past all that. And we nursed her at home for the last month. And we were with her at the moment of her death. And I was with my mother too at the moment of her death. And they were profoundly meaningful and transformational experiences for me that have left me very changed.
Mhm.
Yeah. Very beautiful and powerful experiences.
Now, see, this is where we differ, I guess. I lost my dad in September, so next month will be a year, and it still feels like yesterday. But in the cases of both my parents, I didn't get to see them die, and I felt like I didn't get to say goodbye.
That's hard.
And yeah, it is, and especially as their primary caregiver
Yeah.
for a total of 9 years, I felt, I felt some type of way. But at the same time, someone told me that maybe I wasn't supposed to see them die. And that's just how it was. I wasn't supposed to see it happen. Maybe it would have affected me in a different way. And I think they're probably right, to be honest, but I'm still living on that patch of land that says I should have been able to say goodbye. But at the same time, I think I was saying goodbye, but I didn't know it. And I think that's the part that makes me a little upset, is that it was happening, but I didn't know it was happening.
Something a little bit incomplete there. Yeah, that's
Right.
hard. That's hard to live with. Yeah.
Right. So it's been a tough journey, even though my mom passed 5 years ago. I guess because my dad just passed, I've been thinking about her.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling someone we both know yesterday, we were prepping for an upcoming World Childless Week segment. We were talking about the fact that she started me. I don't know how many people are familiar with, I know people are listening from around the world. And here in the US, the Pandora bracelets are a big deal. So I have one. And my mom started me because you have to get the bracelet and then you get the charms accordingly. People give them to you for birthdays and all of the things. I've gotten them from coworkers. So my bracelet's almost full, I guess is my point. But the bigger point is she said, "What do you want for your birthday?" one year, and she got me the bracelet. So every time I look at my Pandora bracelet, I think of her, but it's like I've been thinking of her more now. And I
Yeah.
guess it's at least in part because I just lost my dad. And
Yeah.
I just celebrated my first birthday without the two of them on this planet.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I just had it was my 60th very recently, and it was my first birthday without my mum. And, I don't have siblings. I don't have children. I don't have parents. And it's kind of, it's different. It's very grown up.
Yeah, that's it right there. Very grown up.
Yeah.
Something you said a minute ago as well, that it really changes you. And I thought about that yesterday too. I'm not the same person I was before. Sometimes I kind of wish I were, but then I think there's no going back. It totally changes you. And then it changes your relationships. At least for me, there are certain friendships that I just have not picked back up.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's happened to you. It's different. It's not that you don't care for the person anymore. It's just that you're in a different place mentally, emotionally, even physically, in a different place. What do you think?
I certainly experienced that with my childless grief. Not so much with my mom, and maybe one person, I think, thinking about it, there's maybe one person who's in that category. But as to being changed, yeah, I guess it is a maturational experience to lose your parents. I mean, I know that, that I'm next. And there is a sense of the preciousness of life. I've been reminded of the preciousness of life and also the extraordinary and ordinariness of a human life and how quickly it passes. For those who are listening, who are perhaps, maybe still in your 30s, it's really kind of in your 30s and then in your 40s that you start to notice time speeding up. I mean, so much so, I remember I spoke to my ex-husband's grandfather when he was in his 90s. I must have been about 30 when I said this. I said, is it true that when you get older, like time gets faster and faster? And he was in his 90s and he said, my dear, by the time you're my age, it's breakfast every 5 minutes. And I really got that. I'm really starting to get that sense of like, is there any point actually taking the Christmas decorations down anymore? Because I swear, it's like, it just comes round again like a flash. But that also makes that sense of like the things that perhaps we want to achieve or complete or start. I've certainly in the last 5 years, like, okay, I'm going to have to let go of quite a lot of these. There just isn't going to be time. And that has been a big transition in my sort of maturational process. Is like, I used to have a youthful kind of approach, which was, well, I'll do this and then I'll do that and then I'll get a PhD and then I'll write that book and then and now it's like, oh no, if you do that, you might not have time for that. And also my mum died from dementia, and I'm biologically very similar to my mum. Now that is not a slam dunk, given.
Right.
We have very different lifestyle factors and I've had the great privilege of being able to deal with a lot of trauma in my life, whereas my mum carried a lot of her childhood trauma with her. So these things have big impacts that we don't yet completely understand. But I am starting to go, okay, I'm going to have to be more discerning about what my priorities are in, as Jung called it, the afternoon of my life. And I think I'm in my late afternoon. I could be heading towards my early evening. Maybe 60s is late afternoon, maybe 70s is early evening, maybe 80s is mid-evening, and 90s is, very late at night.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different mentality to a youthful mentality, not necessarily a worse one, but it's very different.
Yeah, I'm finding that I just wasn't ready.
Yeah.
I just keep saying that to my friends. Wait, how did I get to be this age? I'm not ready. This is not fair. I wasn't ready for this. But
that's interesting. Yeah. Do you know, I think I've been waiting for it. I think
really,
yeah, I think the midlife, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, cluster I'm going to anyway. The midlife experience of, divorce. My first husband, our relationship broke down because he became a very, very serious drug addict. It destroyed our business, our finances, our home, our marriage. So I left, when the marriage broke down, when I was in my late 30s, I sort of lost everything. And then, I thought I would meet someone else and maybe perhaps try IVF because I'd been trying for 11 years to get pregnant unsuccessfully. Knew nothing about IVF, didn't know that the chances of it working were so slim, but I didn't meet someone else. And so I arrive at my mid-40s, single, childless, petless, living in rented accommodation, no longer having a home, no longer having any savings. And then the perimenopause kicked in. So I just felt that midlife dark night of the soul was so profound and changed me so deeply, especially also being treated like a social pariah for being single and childless in my 40s. And it's so passionately shaped me, that period of my life, that, the fact that I'm partnered again, there's a big part of me that still feels single and is also I think it's very important to be an advocate for single childless people because they often get left out of the conversation, as do our queer brothers and sisters. And it just changed me so profoundly and grew me up so profoundly that I think I've been on the on-ramp for elderhood for a good 15 years.
Oh, wow.
So I'm quite excited to be here. So I have a different experience to you. You're surprised to be there. I'm like, oh, I'm finally here.
I'm not ready. I'm not happy about it. But I mean, just jokingly, half jokingly, I guess, because, what's the alternative? I think it's important to embrace where we are, because I've watched people who did not embrace the fact that they were the age they were and trying to fight for their youth. And it's not a good look, to be honest.
It's not. And I'm excited about the different sort of internal reality of this time of my life and how that is changing my writing and my thinking and what I want to do. And also my relationship to my childlessness is changing as I get older as well, as kind of, those potentially fertile years get further and further into the rear view mirror. And my childlessness doesn't impact me so much anymore. I mean, I don't really think about it. If it wasn't my work, I wouldn't really think about it. But I notice I'm moving into that stage of my life where I'm really interested in creating intergenerational connections, in what work can I do to be a good ancestor for those generations to come. They may not be my biological children. That doesn't seem important to me, but I do want to create intergenerational connections between older women without children and, young people in their, let's say in their teens, their 20s, their 30s, who perhaps are struggling with childlessness, that may be, but I think really struggling with the lack of elders and the lack of role models in the world, because it's very tough to be a young person right now.
We kind of mentioned this before we started recording too. The fact that we do exist and we do have a part to play in society as childless, not by choice people.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people out there calling us crazy cat ladies and all of the other things, the name calling that's going on when everybody on this planet is here for a reason. I keep saying that on my podcast. In our case, like you mentioned, those in their 30s who are listening right now, they may be in a different place because, if you're in your 30s and you're listening, your 20s and 30s, you may be still in shock at the fact that you're not going to have children or you're having a difficult time or whatever your journey is right now. You still have hope, and that's fine. We will hope with you. But as we continue to get older and realize, it's not going to happen, then what's my role? My role is to be a fabulous aunt, even to adult nieces and nephews. I reached out to one of my nephews yesterday and asked him how he was doing. He told me he was under the weather because his birthday was yesterday as of this recording. And I said, I really want you to go get your annual checkup. I mean, that's what a mom would say to her child, most likely, to her adult child. You can't make him go, he's an adult. But I'm invested in these people because I've known them since they were born. They're my nephews. They have parents. Their parents are alive and well, thank God. But I feel invested in knowing that they're well. And I don't understand why people who make comments like this can't understand that we are vested and invested in the future of our individual countries, even if we don't have children.
Absolutely. And it's when people sort of, talk about childless women, I notice they're never really talking about childless people and childless men. It's always childless women. And let's just face it, a lot of the reasons that women find themselves childless, not by choice, has been because of difficulty finding a willing and suitable partner. So this is not just a female issue. In fact, a Pew Research study came out in July 2024, and it was the first of its kind that actually looked at those also who were 50 plus in America and what were their reasons for not having children. And I think it was something like 33%. It was because they couldn't find a partner. So we finally have a number, and about 31% was childless by choice. It's great to finally have some qualitative information around those numbers. And I'll give you the link, Civilla, so you can put it in the show notes because it's really important. And it also looks at those 18 to 49, and 50% of people in America surveyed, 18 to 49, don't think they're going to have children, 50%. And this is up about 9 percentage points since 2018 when you and I last spoke. So there's a big, big change happening. But women without children are that village. And people say, it takes it takes a village to raise a child. We're part of that village. We are part of extended family networks, community networks. We're school teachers and pediatricians. And even if our work isn't directly with the next generation, we willingly pay for the civic society, the hospitals, the schools, the programs that support other people's children. So the idea that we have no stake in the future, we're actually paying for the next generation, and we do so willingly and lovingly, as well as all of the volunteering and the things that happen within our families, extended families and families of choice. I mean, my nieces, I call them nieces by love, not blood. I have no siblings, but my ex-husband was one of 6, and 4 of those 6 had children. And I know those children. I've known them all since the day they were born. And there's one family which has 4 girls in it that I'm very close to. The eldest two are now mothers, and the youngest two, one is child-free and one is single, not by choice. And the child-free one, she's doing really well in the world. She's becoming like a big international DJ. She's like, I have to say she's the rebel in the family. So it's like, not surprised that I was the aunt she connected with. And on Mother's Day this year, I got this beautiful card from her and it said, "Thank you. I wouldn't be me without you." Oh, it was such a beautiful acknowledgement that, my presence in her life had been a shaping force in her life. And
that's beautiful.
Yeah. And it's not really mothering. It's something else. It's just love, And I also feel really privileged that their mother of these 4 girls was always so welcoming to me, because it's not always the case in families that people are welcoming to have childless and child-free women around their daughters. There is the stigma of pronatalism, which is very much behind these political comments, denigrating our worth and value. They speak to very deep unconscious complexes in humankind that still is afraid of women without children, that finds us other and a threat. And quite frankly, when there are so many of us, and we are educated and liberated and politically enfranchised, and we're not, bringing up children, and many of us are also not bringing up men children in relationship, there's a lot we can get involved in. And that is actually quite a threat to the status quo. There is a reason they're afraid of us. Because quite frankly, if all of the childless and child-free women of the world actually realized their power, the whole thing would just collapse. The current status quo, which doesn't serve men, doesn't serve women, doesn't serve the culture. I mean, it is so, so overdue for an upgrade.
I think in general, if women just knew their worth and power, it would be a different world.
Absolutely. So, what the status quo does is it shames feminism, it shames women's empowerment, it shames women. And I don't see the world that traditional politicians want to keep is a fantasy, like the great American dream. And, it was a 10-year period of the baby boom that is kind of idolized in American kind of fantasy as being this good old days to get back to. It was a very, very small period of history that is not replicable economically or politically. And it doesn't serve the world we now live in, which is a very, very different world.
I don't know why they're not seeing that. I mean, it's not that I don't think we're ever going to just, maybe we'll do it to ourselves. If we all just disappear off this planet, it'll be our own fault.
Well, we are heading into a period which is, and it is baked into the numbers, this can't be turned around by pronatalist policies. Even banning abortion and banning birth control will not turn this one around. We are heading for a period of population decline. It is actually baked into the numbers. We won't start to see it really, really taking effect for about another 20 years, but we are heading into a period of global population decline, because as so many countries are seeing a birth rate below replacement level. For example, the UK just went to 1.49 and America's somewhere very close. When it drops below 1.5 per woman, it's not actually possible to turn it back around to increase it, because just as you can have exponential growth, and you're a numbers person, Civilla, so you'll completely get this, you can have exponential decline as well. So we are going to see many, many, many fewer children being born. Politically, economically, socially, that is going to be very, very difficult to manage, because our economies, our pension systems, our ideologies are set up on a fantasy program of perpetual growth, even though the planet has reached her limit. So there will be people looking for someone to blame. And who are they going to blame? Oh, let me just have a think about this. Childless women.
It's our fault.
It's all going to be about us not having enough children. It's like, so I think the harshness of the political rhetoric against us, I think we need to brace ourselves. I think we need to come together. I think we need to educate ourselves about pronatalism. I think we need to get involved in organizations like Christine Eriksen's New Legacy Institute and actually find a kind of a political voice for people without children, because I think the status quo is going to come for us, and it's going to come for us hard in the next 20 years. I don't think it's going to be pretty at all.
It sounds so scary.
Well, if you are a student of history, sometimes it's not helpful, but the writing is on the wall. about that. And I think that childlessness is going to move out from being a personal sadness into being a very political and social issue. And we kind of need to skill up a bit about that if we're going to be able to advocate for ourselves and for others who are not yet ready to advocate for themselves. Because when you're in deep grief, you're not in a position to advocate for anything. You're just getting through the day.
Right. And some people will say, in my case, it's been almost a year. Are you really still grieving? And I always say that there's no timeline on grief, and no one's putting a timeline on my grief, because everybody has different relationships with their parents. I'm not saying my parents were perfect, but I will say they did the best that they could. And I guess I'm kind of living proof that they did a pretty decent job with their 5 children. So
yeah.
So
I think when someone says, aren't you over that yet? It's kind of like there's part of me, the sort of the naughty part, that would want to say, oh, is it inconveniencing you? I mean, because what is that comment about?
I don't understand it. I feel like they just have either not been through that type of grief, or their heart is not where they could actually grieve. And I don't want to sound judgmental, but grieve a loss. Maybe they're in a different place mentally and emotionally. As for me, the grief of losing my parents, I'm still, yes, on a daily basis, I'm doing life. I'm doing what I need to do. I'm working, I'm podcasting, I'm doing all of the things, having lunch with friends, all of the things. But there is deep within my heart a deep grief. And, I guess it'll heal with time. And then as far as the childless aspect, I think, yes, I'm into the part now where I have a great nephew. So if I had children, I'd be having grandchildren. So I have a great nephew who's about to be 4 in a couple of weeks. And I'm loving seeing my nephews thrive and seeing that one of them already has a child of his own. And as you said earlier, just trying to be a part of their lives. I may not be in their everyday lives, but being a part, checking in with him, maybe doing FaceTimes every once in a while, whatever we need to do as the older, because we're now the older part of the family. Now that our parents are gone, my siblings and I are the quote unquote elders. I'm not ready for this.
I was going to say, once again, we are the grown-ups now, Civilla. I mean, help!
Exactly. Oh my goodness. But it is what it is. It's going to happen regardless. So we just have to, be as mature as possible. But I think,
well, I know, and I knew plenty of people who were mature in the number of their years, but were still quite emotionally immature people. So, getting older is not what makes you an elder. There is a kind of an internal maturational process. And for whatever reason, it's not a path everyone chooses. And I think it is shaped by our relationship to loss and moving through loss and transforming loss, or rather being transformed by loss. I think that has a powerful shaping effect on being an elder, being around death, realizing that death is the companion to all of our lives. It's what gives our life meaning as well. We are, what do we achieve in our lifespan? And by achieve, I put that in big inverted commas, because that's, a very, very subjective thing. And, I was working with a client. I'm a psychotherapist. I was working with a childless client, a lady in her late 60s who had terminal cancer. And we were working together for the last year of her life, really helping her to frame and understand meaning in her life, and also that to continue to heal some of the wounds of her own childhood, and to realize you can still be healing, you can still be living until you die. It was an incredibly profound experience for me to work with someone who knew they were going to die and was not flinching away from that. And we did a beautiful ceremony for her. So the Gateway Women online community, which is now called the Childless Collective online community, we came together to create a living memorial ceremony for her. So we came together with poems and song and readings that we held, and she did attend for the last bit of it. She was quite poorly, obviously, towards the end. And I heard from her carers that she kept listening to it. She kept listening to the recording. So in a way, we celebrated her while she was still here. And I wrote a eulogy for her funeral in New Zealand. And you know what? This idea, she was a single, childless, older woman. This idea that no one is there for us as we age. She had so many visitors in her nursing home that they had to ration them because it was too tiring for her. Her funeral, she had space for 20 and there were 40 people there and it was live streamed. You know, she had a huge impact on the people around her. She didn't really have nephews and nieces. She wasn't in touch with the rest of her family. Her parents had long gone. And yet she radiated something into the world that only she could have done. And we celebrated her for it. It really gave me hope that perhaps together as childless women and childless elders, we can recognize each other in special ways. And if you're someone who is really worried about aging without children, I really think that people like us, Civilla, myself, and other elders in the childless space, I think we can change the culture powerfully by how we talk about this and how we do this. And I think we can give hope to younger people that they're not going to be lonely at the end.
That is a beautiful way of saying that, because there is a lot of fear. This getting older bit, as I call it. And,
totally. I was terrified.
Yeah, it's terrifying because you really wonder who is going to care for me. And but the thing is, and I've heard parents say this, there's no, and we know this, there's no guarantee because all of your children can look the other way. I know a family now that has 6 or 8 kids and no one is caring for this mom. They've all looked the other way.
That's absolutely heartbreaking. And it does happen. I mean, it's more common that the children do get involved, but that's not always a good story either, you know? I mean, a project that I'm working on that has kind of come out of AWOC, out of my time with Aging Without Children, is I have been interviewing and talking to people around the world over the last few years who have created versions of mutual aid projects to support each other in aging without children. And next year, I'm going to sort of start that in my local community here deep in rural Ireland, which is really about creating a local intergenerational mutual aid network for people aging without children so that we can become like a community of care for each other. And that's not necessarily just care when we're ill. It's, you know, someone to drive you back from the hospital if you're not allowed to drive from a procedure, someone to water your plants when you're on holiday, someone to help you out when the boiler blows up, or there's something really heavy that needs moving and you can't move it. These kinds of local community things that actually enable you to continue living in your community and in your home, hopefully until advanced old age. Because statistics show that people without children are 25% more likely to go into a long-term care facility than someone with children at a younger age and at a lower level of dependency. And this is because of not having easy access to intergenerational support. It's not about feeding and bathing and intimate care. It's someone to help out when your iPad updates and you can't make it work anymore. It's someone to help you out when your bank goes online or goes AI and you're not quite sure how to work the system. It's maybe someone to lift the heavy shopping, all the tins and things like that in for you. It's kind of small tasks of daily living. And Civilla, you know, you've cared for both of your parents. I had my mother-in-law living with me for 8 years. I really have like a lived understanding now of what it takes to support someone so that they can continue to thrive independently. And that's what we can be missing as people without children. And as you say, people with children too. A lot of children are living a long way away from home. And if they do have children of their own, often they're having them later in life, in their mid to late 30s or their 40s. So they may be doing a job because it takes 2 incomes to support a family now. They may have teenage children in the house and they've got aging parents. And they may be on the other side of the country. With the best relationship in the world, there is a limit to how they can help. So we do all need to really be thinking about proactively building what I call AlterKin. That's my word, and it stands for Alternative Kinship Network. I'm getting a lot of interest in this project. I'll be starting it next year, be having like an open public meeting in my little town, starting to put frameworks around how we're going to do this, because it's not the same as friendship. It's friendly, but it's not friendship. It's a mutual aid network. So stay tuned. I've got a lot of interest in it.
I'm interested too, so I'd like to hear more about it. You know, anything that I can do to help update.
Yeah, I'm hoping to do a pilot study, like with my own experience for a few years, and it will be a big part of my next nonfiction book, is actually what it takes to create this. And also the whole process of aging as a woman without children mean, my Substack is so popular. I'm really hitting on something that no one else seems to be talking about. And that's what my next big nonfiction book will be about. But that's about 5 years away. But I have to get this novel. I have to get this novel out of the pipes because it's driving me nuts.
Yeah. Get that through and then
Yeah.
continue on. But,
Yeah.
as we wrap things up here, I did put in my notes mutual aid projects and the Childless Collective. So that's in my show notes. So any links that you have that you can send, I'll put in the show notes.
I will. I'll share those for the show. The Childless Collective, by the way, is the new name for the Gateway Women online community. So 2 years ago, I handed over really kind of a big part of my life's work, which was creating the world's first really big network online community for childless women. I handed it over to the next generation in the form of Katie Seppi, who is the founder of the Childless Collective. And she's doing a fantastic job sort of taking on that legacy and transforming it for the next generation, because she's nearly 20 years younger than me. The issues that a 40-year-old childless woman are dealing with now are taking place in a very different cultural environment, a very different ecological and political. And there's a lot less hope about the future now than there was 20 years ago. I'm going to be training with an organization, which some of you may have heard of, which was based on the work of Joanna Macy, in something called The Work That Reconnects, which is really about how helping people to express their grief for what is happening to our earth in a way to help them use that grief to then transform their experience and basically projects around them. And that's going to be a big part of my intergenerational work as well, Civilla, because I think it is an area where I think older childless women and younger people can really connect, is around ecology and what's happening socially, ecologically, and climate-wise. I think we can be wise elders for younger people who are facing unimaginable change. We've been through change. We know what it's like. We know what it's like when life doesn't turn out the way you want, no matter what you do. We've lived through it already, and I think we can be a great resource to younger people facing that in their lives.
And we're still here. We made it.
We're still here, and we're still smiling, and we've ended up with a pretty dark and salty sense of humor as a result.
Still smiling, still laughing. We're still here. We're still strong.
Yeah.
So it can happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm really, really interested in these projects, and I will keep everyone apprised of it. As what I hear from you, I'll go ahead and forward it into our platform. Sure. I was just thinking about my oldest nephew came up here twice because I moved after my dad passed. I sold the house, the whole thing. He sold the house, and all the things. So I'm in a different place now, and he came twice to put my furniture together. And I couldn't have done it. I would have had to have paid somebody to do it because I'm not a put togetherer of anything. But the fact that, he made it his business to come up here the first time by himself, and the second time he brought his wife and my great nephew. So we all had a little time together. That was just wonderful. I think about that when you talk about, how intergenerational, what should I say, communities, and the word escapes me now, but just knowing that we all exist and that we are here for a reason, and that we are here to help the younger people, even if they're not our younger people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what this whole world should be about, and instead of the ugliness that's happening right now.
It should be one big mutual aid network. I think that is how our tribal species evolved. We're not the most successful species on the planet because we can run the fastest or we have the biggest claws, because we know how to cooperate. That's something that I think it's really good to be reminded of sometime. And also, Civilla, I just want to say thank you, because one of the projects I've been doing for a few years is I host these webinars, which are free to attend, called Fireside Wisdom with Childless Elderwomen, where I bring together a panel of amazing childless elder women from around the world 4 times a year. And Civilla is often a guest on those. So thank you very much. And I'll send a link to that because there's one of those coming up again soon for World Childless Week in September. And all of the old ones are recorded and on the Gateway Women website as well, so you can catch up.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me. It's an honor to be on your panels and webinars, so thank you for inviting me. Any final words that you'd like to give to us before we get going?
I would just like to say that if you're suffering, if you're struggling with your childlessness right now, to remember that you were born childless and worthy, and your childlessness does not take that away. You are still childless and worthy.
Worthy is the key word, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you so much for your time today, Jody. I know you have a
Yeah.
lot going on. As we clearly heard, you have so much going on and so much that you give to our community. Thank you for all that you've done for the community, and thank you for your time today. It's truly appreciated.
Thank you, Civilla, and right back at you. Thank you for all these many years of podcasting and your service to our community too. Thank you.
Thank you.